All right, we should be live. Good morning, everyone. My name's Doc. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have Schmosby on joining us. If you guys don't know Schmosby, he is a criminally underfollowed account on CT, one of the best traders that I know. You guys may have seen him recently running up accounts on XRP Day or the World Series of Trading competition. He's also more impressively studying medicine at the same time, which I think is like unfathomable, because when I was in med school, I couldn't imagine doing anything other than medicine at the time. So welcome, Schmosby. Thank you for being here.
Hey man, happy to be here. Thanks for the love, man. Can't get a better intro than that.
Yeah. Nah, man. I honestly think that more people should be following you. Like, one of my first interactions with you was, I believe, November, December last year. I think we were mutual followers, but we had an interaction where there was just no one trading the markets. It was just me and you sharing trade setups in December. The market was dead, nothing was going on, and you responded with, "Yeah, Doc and training." And then I was blown away. I was like, "This guy is crushing the market and studying medicine." Blowing my mind.
Yeah, man. I remember that interaction. Actually, we were in the pits of the bear market. I think Bitcoin was just ranging from 17,000 to like 15, 16,000, and it was just moving nowhere. And we were there trying to find them setups on alts and stuff.
Yeah. It was the kind of the similar what we're seeing right now, where it's just like you have 1 to 2% if you're not playing. I don't even remember what the coin was moving at the time. I think it was like Ape was the strongest coin in December.
I think it was Ape. Yeah.
So it's like if you weren't playing Ape, you just didn't have any opportunity. You were just moving 1 or 2%, fully retracing, stuck in a abysmal range, no volatility. But yeah, good times, man. It prepares you and really makes you excited for the environment that we had in 2023.
Yeah, for sure, man. We've had a lot of volatility this year. I think after that kind of FTX, the FTX events and stuff like that, it looked very bleak. But obviously, the good thing about these markets is they're very, very resilient, which is very good.
Yeah. And I think, just following you, you've been on the right side of most of the moves this year. How has that been? Have you was there a strategy going in? Did you buy into the whole echo bubble thesis? What was your strategy going into like 2023?
I think obviously I've been in the market since around like 2020, late 2020 and early 2021. That's kind of where I learned how to like leverage trade for the first time. And obviously the first time is it's a trial by fire, to be honest. But I realized that like there's no point trading and being in trades when you're not sure about what's going to happen next. You ideally want to be in trades for as short a time as possible. And I know obviously there's really good swing traders out there, and they have edges and understanding of the market, which is completely different to my skill set. But I think understanding what you're good at and what areas you kind of excel is really important to figure out early on in your trading career. And for me, I think I realized that swing trading is maybe not my forte, and it's much better to be flat and then kind of be reactive to what the market presents rather than trying to be predictive and try and predict the next 3 months of price action. I kind of let GCR kind of give his thesis, and then I'll kind of work around that with how many longs I want to take and how many shorts I want to take.
That's kind of cool. So you're splitting up the work between yourself and other traders. You're like, I respect his thesis, and I'm just going to play off of that and see what I can bring from my game into the overall picture.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think CT is like, I've said this maybe a few times, but CT is such an underrated tool if you're trading these markets. Like, you've got people like, GCR, Kobe, Don. They all have, such good high time frame reads that, for someone like myself, I think it's not on the same level at all. And I like to kind of aggregate what they're seeing, and that doesn't necessarily mean just because one account is bullish and suggesting that the next 2 months will be good for Bitcoin, that means suddenly I'm longing everything. It just means that I will maybe hold off on shorting because all these people that I respect that are very good at reading the market's high time frame, they're suggesting that we're due for some upside. So instead of hunting short setups, I'll be more long biased. And I think just having that that internal bias one way or the other to start, each week or each day. It's really helpful, because otherwise you're gonna, and you don't want to be ending up on the wrong side of a setup.
Absolutely. So when exactly was that moment for you where you were like, okay, it seems like, things have bottomed. I should be picking up spot. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but like when you felt like, okay, this is the time to be risk on. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different, like, how do you call them, pivot points. So just pulling up like the Bitcoin chart. Um,
Why don't you share your chart and then you can kind of orate over that.
yeah, sure.
Pull it up instead. Did you get it up? I don't see it yet.
Sorry, just give me a second. I'll
Oh,
get
no
the-
worries, no worries, no worries. Just double checking. But yeah, you know, for me personally, when we were in that range down there, I kind of had this thesis of like some coins like Ethereum didn't make lower lows, after FTX. And I kind of used that to my advantage. Like maybe I can use that as kind of a trigger point of being like, well, why is the most bearish event of the year not creating lower lows on, arguably the best coin in the market, second best coin in the market, however you want to look at it. So that was kind of my kind of pivot point for me. So go ahead and let me
Yeah,
know.
sure. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, sound. Yeah, so I think, obviously we touched on a little bit about how we were trading in December. I think that would be, this kind of range around here.
Yep,
And we were literally, that was the bottom. And obviously part of that was all news induced with FTX. And we didn't straight away kind of reverse all of them moves. We just ended up ranging, and a lot of people were calling for 12k,
yep,
suggesting that this is it, we're kind of done. You can't have the one of the largest kexes in the industry blow up and expect to kind of bounce back. But
yep.
as we approached year end, I think one of the most notable accounts, to be honest, who he's quite I think he's quite a split opinion in CT, but I think he's Hal, North NLP. I think is his account. Sorry. Um, Hal was very bullish, and he was saying, as we get into the new year, um, there's going to be a lot more inflows, and right now obviously people are marking losses against their books and stuff. So getting long ahead of the new year is really important. And just kind of reading into his thesis there, I was thinking, that makes a lot of sense. And I just kind of flipped long bias around Christmas time, straight after Christmas. And there's a few days of where I was thinking, am I in the right kind of camp here, to be searching for longs? But as well, I think you have to look at, I think it was Donald as well. He said, we're at like 15, 16k, and he put up a setup, and he was like BTC, like stop loss at 0, target 100k,
Yeah,
and the
yeah, I remember
entry
that.
was like 15k.
Yeah,
And I was like, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a trade that I should be taking. But if he's bullish, if Hal's bullish, and we're coming into year end, there's going to be a lot of new money inflows as people kind of come into the new quarter and stuff.
yep.
It's definitely makes sense to kind of, I don't think it makes sense to search for shorts after FTX is already blown up. Now we kind of should be looking for longs. So that, and then we got some of the best moves of the year, to be
Yeah.
honest. We moved, what did we move?
I don't know about you, but it really felt like that January, that yearly open move, like literally into that first FOMC, I believe February 1st. To me, that felt like the only time of the year where we were truly PVE, where you could find a ticker that was lagging and you could get away with longing that. You could get away with the catch-up trade. You didn't have to be in 5 coins. There was actually a watch list of 50 coins. I felt like that was the only time this year where we had that opportunity. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think I kind of echo that as well. I think because what it was that everything was so criminally underpriced after FTX imploding,
Yep.
that we just basically repriced back to fair value, as you would kind of describe. And that's why everything was so easy, in the sense where all the coins needed to pump, in a sense. you were playing against, just people that were completely offsides after FTX. Whereas now, I think, we're trading a little bit higher, and everything's kind of made its move, and it's kind of hit the prices that people are willing to sell at. And there's not really any more fresh buyers in the market. Back then, it was a whole different story. And yeah, kind of getting long in December and January, that paid really well. Paying, as you said, across a lot of different altcoins. There was loads of different setups kind of going. And then actually, I think I ended up taking a break around February, because I was studying at the time as well. Um, So I kind of missed, I think, was this when USDC
Yep.
depegged?
Yep.
Yeah. So
It
I
was
actually missed all of that. And I remember coming back like a week later, and I saw USDC hit like 90 cents, and I was like, bro, how did I how did I miss this long?
yeah.
Such a no-brainer long. But I was like, okay, time to, as they say, time to pay attention. And I got back in around 23K, I think, something like that. I think this was now then we started coming into the ETF news. Um, and I just started getting back into the throw of things around the time BlackRock submitted their ETF filing. Maybe it was around March
That was actually way later.
or
That was the
later.
June
Later,
one. That
June.
was the June one.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I think I ended up trading this move in March, and then again we ended up chopping and retracing. I think I ran up an account maybe from March to towards early April, and then I had exams. So fortunately, I suppose they came at the right time in the
It,
sense
it
that
seems like it's working out well for you. You got exams and studying at all the bearish times, and you're active for the bullish times.
yeah. So I think as well, that kind of reflects in my Twitter activity as well. Sometimes I'm here, and then I kind of disappear for a week or two as
Yep.
assignments, exams, that kind of thing hit. It's very difficult to kind of balance
Yep.
both things, and I think it's very dangerous to especially I think this kind of will reflect for people who have jobs and commitments as well. It's very difficult to trade alongside a full-time job or full-time commitment to study, or even a family, that
Yep.
kind of thing, and it's very dangerous to try and attempt both when you don't have the time. That's why I'm more of a risk on for a few weeks, like a period where I'm running up an account, and I'll kind of put uni to the side. But when I'm busy with uni, then I'll most likely take very, very, very few trades, and I'm very out of the market. I don't really bother to check, because I know if I start checking, I'm going to start getting baited into trades which I haven't really thought through, and I don't have the time or the mental output to monitor whilst I'm busy with other commitments.
Yep.
So
And
I think it's very
there's a
important to
big
think about
lesson
that.
in there that you kind of glossed over is like you're active during the risk on times, which I think is really important for people to understand is that the market gives you these short bursts of extreme opportunity. And I think a lot of people are scared or hesitant at that time to be risk on when it feels risky. And then when you kind of settle down and the momentum slows and you have, you get a chance to breathe, that's when a lot of people try to be risk on. And there's just not the same amount of opportunity there. So it works really well when you're able to, they say don't time the market, but you really can sometimes with Bitcoin is just submit when things are moving and really just join the market, be a participant. I think CBS likes to say that is that you can't out trade a trending market. As long as you're in the market, you're going to get, at least some reward.
Yeah, exactly. Being risk on when the times are good is 100% the way to be. And people might be asking how are you meant to stay risk on and then know when to risk off? And I think that kind of comes when the setups that normally hit in a bullish environment stop hitting.
Yeah.
And I think you have to take one or two, and suddenly again you're taking losses, and you realize, okay, I've been on the offensive for the last 2 3 weeks, and now it's time to switch straight away to the defensive. um, and that's all about capital preservation. And I think that's why as well, I like to go hard and run accounts up, and then I'll just stop, and I'll either restart with a small balance, or I'll just take a break for a bit, kind of revel in that win, and then go again when I think things are getting interesting again.
Yep.
Um, but I think it makes sense to be flat a lot of the time, and that's kind of one of the things that I've echoed. I think one of the biggest lessons in 2023 is for me was just stay flat almost all the time. And when you think that, this is the time to bet more, then you just go as hard as you can, really.
Yeah, definitely. There's also like this mental relief of being flat. When you feel like, let's say for example, you have $1,000 account, you ran it up to 3K, you've hit your goal, whatever it may be, and at that moment, you feel like you've caught the bulk of the move, you've hit your goals, but you're still like, oh, there might be an opportunity here, there might be an opportunity there, and let's say you stay active for a week. You may get another 20% out of it, but it may not be worth your time. That time may be spent better elsewhere. For you, it's university. For a guy like me who's sitting at the desk too long, it's probably spent, better focusing on my physical health, better on my relationships outside of crypto and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lesson in there. The value of being flat when, it's really mentally relieving as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when you're flat, you can look at things completely unbiased. Whereas if you've got, like three, four longs open, and then you're trying to assess, what's going to happen next in the market, you're just going to be looking for reasons to stay bullish, and reasons for your positions to end up closing in profit. Whereas if you're flat, you can just be like, yeah, this shit looks fucked,
Yeah.
and it's time to just basically hit short or continue to be flat. um, and as well, when there's news hitting the market, and I think especially maybe from Q1, Q2, Q3 onwards, it's been a very news driven market.
Yeah.
And when you're flat, you can react to them headlines. Whereas if you're already in a position and the headline is, going against what you're in, then you're basically screwed, because you're gonna have to take a lot of slippage to get out, or a huge loss depending on if you're not active at the time that the headline hits. So
Yeah.
I think
That's
being
wise.
flat has been a blessing in that sense.
And that kind of brings me to my next question. Since you feel like you're catching these moves and then you're going risk off, personally, did you end up playing any of the risk curves this year? Did you end up going on chain? Did you end up chasing any narratives after Bitcoin has made its move? Was there anything like that that you were looking at, or was it mainly I want to catch the big move and then I just want to chill?
So I think on chain is basically an area where I really lack. In 2021, I was in everything, in the sense where I was, derivatives trading. I was on chain. I was in, the FTM eco, the AVAX eco, all them kind of coins. But once all that stuff basically collapsed, I was like, this shit is really hard. And I think it's a whole different ball game. So when I see you kind of trading RLB and even CAS and stuff, so many people have been unwilling to trade it, and
Yep.
myself, it falls into that category as well. But I know for a fact, that some of your biggest wins have come from Unibot, RLB, CAS, and these are places where the majority of people aren't really willing to go, and I
Yep.
think that's why the money is easier there for sure. And it is something that I'm hoping to improve. It's an area I'm hoping to improve on, which is why I made a friend tech. I thought I was a bit late, but I thought,
Yeah.
better late than never. And just kind of get involved with trying out new things, and I think that does pay really well in crypto. Um, Even just engaging with protocols, and utilizing the new stuff that's being built. Sometimes for an airdrop, sometimes just to kind of get a feel of what's out there.
Yeah.
Um, I
Always
think
being in
it's
tune with like the current meta, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think just good to be curious as well, um, because obviously we're all here to make money, but um, there's more to it than that, in the sense where you'll find better opportunities where there's less people, and it's less, you're playing against people which are more inexperienced in some aspects, and the money just might be easier to be made there, rather than derivatives trading against the cartel.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, this is something that I learned from APG. Was watching you guys last year, summer 22. I was kind of the guy that was always late on everything, and I was picking up the scraps. I would miss the A move, but I was like, okay, that's the blueprint. Let me play the B move, right? So I was never catching the big things. I was always like the cleanup crew,
Mm,
which worked fine. But I was like, going into 2023, I want to be the guy that's always catching the A move. And a big mental barrier for me was always, let me just, I was unwilling to submit to what's hot, right? And that's what I kind of did this year. I was like, I'm not going to ask questions. I'm not going to think about fundamentals. I'm not going to question why a coin is pumping. I'm just going to be in the trade. And for me, a weakness was I don't know how to get into a trending market, right? And something I focused on at what I would call the off season, the December 22, the off season. I was like,
Mm,
is there a way that I can get into these trending markets? And that was a big edge for me in 2023 was, okay, if people are hating on this casino coin, but it's going up, I should probably add more exposure. People are hating on this coin that's top 100 and it just keeps trending and it's doing multiples and no one's talking about it because it's not listed on Binance. I should probably get more exposure to that. Very simple, just kind of mental things there of like, if people are fading it and hating it, it's probably going to do better. And the crowded trades, the one that everyone kind of agrees on should go higher, just doesn't do anything. Like you've heard many times this year, Bitcoin should hit that 32K liquidity. I don't know how many
mm,
times we've heard Bitcoin to
yeah,
32, and it's 29, it's 21.8 or excuse me, 31.8. It can't get to 32. It's just right there
yeah,
because you really don't want to be in the trades that everyone feels comfortable taking. You want to be in the trades that people feel uncomfortable taking, and then they submit late. And that's kind of, I think Hasaka posted something about that, about like the danger of the submitters. The late submitters is the more danger or something like that. So I've kind of
yeah,
used all these
exactly.
things to my advantage in 2023.
Yeah, for sure. I think, once trades become consensus on CT, that's when it's time to look for exits, not for entries.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like you said, when there's coins that kind of polarize the TL, like RLB, like Unibot, those are definitely the times to just buy first and ask questions later to some extent.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, for sure, credit to you. This is an area where I'm very much lacking. Like I missed RLB, I missed Unibot, and in some ways, I was thinking, shit, man, I need to get into that, and hopefully, towards the end of this year, I'll improve in that area. But on the other hand, I didn't want to go in um, unprepared in a sense where I don't know what I'm doing, and I didn't want to be the fish where there's a lot of sharks in there. Um,
Yeah.
but I think for sure it's the best way is to kind of just get involved and start maybe with a smaller stack and just kind of learn as you go. I think that's definitely the
Yeah.
best way.
Now, there's something you touched on earlier, and it's more of a technical side, but you said, when it's getting risk off, when your kind of setups that you're used to taking no longer hit. Is there one for you? Do you have like a bread and butter setup that you're like, this stopped hitting? This is kind of a warning sign for me.
I think with when you're taking a lot of longs on like altcoins and you're going for them H1 200 EMA retests and they provide the bounce normally, like 9 times out of 10, or even the 15-minute retest when you're just scalping,
Yeah.
playing the long side, and just buying those dips systematically and every time they're paying. When those dip buys stop working and suddenly the consolidations start to look a bit choppy,
Mm,
things the price isn't reacting to support in the way that it has been previously, especially on the 1 day time frame or the 4 hour time frame. I think those are all warning signs that maybe there's not as many buyers now as there was previously.
yeah.
I think maybe once you have maybe 2 or 3 of those setups kind of stop out, or your some I think to begin with, maybe those setups might still hit, but they might take longer as well. So I think the duration for me, I'm not in trades very long anymore. My time in trades has reduced quite a bit. Like I said, I don't really swing, mostly just scalp now. And I think when I'm scalping long and the duration that I'm in each trade starts to lengthen significantly, um, that's kind of a warning sign that things are taking a lot longer. Maybe I should start thinking about either flipping and hedging or just kind of closing longs and seeing what happens next. And that doesn't work every time. Sometimes I might risk off and we pump again, and I might miss that move, but that's completely fine. I just reevaluate, and just because you miss a move doesn't mean you start chasing or flipping and trying to
Yeah.
fade it.
And I also think that one thing you said is that you're not swinging as much anymore, and I think the market isn't set up for that at least in the last maybe 2 months. Is there's really not swings to take, and I've noticed this myself because I'm forcing myself. I don't, in 2022, I was predominantly short. I think one of my portfolios was at 88% shorts versus
Well,
longs.
yeah.
And this year, it's completely flipped. It's probably 90% longs. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, the long side pays so much better. And I want to kind of continue to stick to that. But there's no continuation setups anymore. And I'm getting caught in that myself, finding that, I've taken a long, can I take a second one for a higher high? And almost every time the answer has been no in the last 2 months. It's always just there's one move and it kind of bleeds out back to origin, and there's a bunch of scalps that you can take along the way. So I think, to your credit, sticking to the scalp, sticking to the lower time frames is really the way to play if you're still being active in this market. Like yesterday, we got that pump on Bitcoin. I don't even know what you want to call it, a pump, like a 1% move to 26.3, and it fully retraced. So there's no continuation. There's no breaker setup. There's no trend line that you can play off of. There's no EMA that you can tag. It's just a one pump chump.
Yeah, right now I think it's just pure volatility hell, in the sense we just, people say, oh, we're dumping, and then you go to check the chart and, like, we've moved less than 1%, and that's a move nowadays. Um, and I think people are getting conditioned into thinking that this is it for BTC and ETH, in the sense that we're just gonna range around 25 forever. But that's been the theme, as you said, for 2023, that there's been a lot of low volatility, and then if you're, so long as you're long on the days that we start pumping, then you capture most of the moves. I think across this year, all the moves have happened across maybe like 5 days each time, and then we just chop for ages.
Yep.
So it's been, yeah, it's like you said, it's been a very poor market for trending traders.
Yeah. And most of us traders know there's no money in prediction. It's better to be like prepared and react. But if I had to put a gun to your head and ask you, what do you see the market for the rest of this year, the rest of 2023? What are your kind of like targets, ideas? What do you think happens?
I think a lot of it depends on whether we get ETF news before the year's end. And at the moment, it doesn't. I'm not too sure. I've not really been keeping up with the ETF news. I kind of gave up after
Me too, to
after.
be honest.
Yeah, I got tired of hearing about ETF.
Yeah, me too.
But with Grayscale winning against SEC, BlackRock's has their delay. I think they delayed the last news was um, all the ETFs getting delayed, and I think maybe they got pushed back to January. If I'm right
I
in
think it's October, but I may be wrong.
yeah, I think October, and then maybe some of them, if the next pushback date will be
Yeah.
January.
Yeah.
And I think again consensus will be in October. It's just another delay probably. If they do approve it in October, then maybe we do get a little bit more upside. I'm not sure that we have the juice to break 30.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I think gun to head, I would expect us to stay around 25, and if we do get a move, I wouldn't be surprised to see us test 20s. And I think around that area would definitely be a good spot to buy. But again,
What are
it's
your
I don't really like to make too many predictions,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's things change. They're continually changing, and the picture's always evolving. So it's best to just kind of keep an open mind. I think it's good to have plans, but plan both ways. And then once those kind of things hit, then you can follow the respective plan. So you could plan for ETFs approval in October, and have a list of coins that you want to buy, longs that you'd want to take, because I think what people might not have realized is when we got the first ETF announcement, that was I think it was here in June. It was June, right?
yeah, it was June.
Yeah, yeah, zero in June. Yeah. So coins like obviously BTC outperformed maybe 90% of alts. So I actually longed BTC, I longed STX, and then I longed about 5 other alts, maybe stuff like Sol and a couple of other coins. Can't remember now. And actually, my BTC PNL was higher than literally all of the altcoins except STX. And I was thinking to myself, like, shit, I should have just used all the margin for BTC then, because the risk is much lower in the downside risk, and it's completely outperformed as well.
Yep.
So I realized I hadn't thought this through properly, because I just saw a good headline. I just longed everything, whereas that's not the optimal way to utilize the capital that you have. And I think planning that out for the next headlines is definitely the way to go. So when the Grayscale headline hit, I had a list of coins that I wanted to long. So ETC, and Zen as well. So I think a lot of people miss Zen when the Grayscale news hit, and it actually, I think it was the best performer maybe. Amongst all the altcoins. It pumped. Let me get the chart up. Yeah, so it hit all the way to like 8.1, and it started off below 7.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good day for that coin. And we did end up kind of retracing all the moves for Grayscale, but it was really helpful to. I wasn't panicking and thinking, shit, what do I need to long now? When the news hit, I already had a plan, I had a list, so
Yeah.
I just kind of took all the emotion out of it and just systematically went about what I knew I had to do. And I think that was a good learning curve for me, understanding, you know, if this happens, then I will do this.
Yeah.
But if this doesn't happen, then I'll do that. So on the flip side, there's always a plan for if the ETF is denied, then you want to be shorting X, Y, and Z, or you want to hedge with this, and this. So I think it's definitely important to have a few different scenarios planned out.
Yep. Was the next question I was going to ask was, do you think at the current time, is there any opportunity for long only traders outside of cartel coins? Is there anything that you see on the market that's worth paying attention to on the long side? Or do you think like mainly everything just needs to retreat and reaccumulate?
Um, maybe I don't know if the audience is much interested in stocks, but like I like coin.
Yep.
We're back above. This is the old chart that I always have. But we are testing 82 right now, which is very significant level. If we can break back above 83, which is like the range high for me,
Yep.
um, then I definitely think that we can potentially trend back up in towards 100 and 100 plus.
Yeah. For me
So
on coin, it was
go on, sorry.
actually pretty. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go on. Sorry, I was just want to hear what you said.
I was saying, for me on coin, it was actually really simple. It's like we had like a 2-year downtrend underneath the daily 100, daily 200 EMAs, and this was kind of the first breakout of it, right? And we had that retest just a week ago or something, right around 73, 75. I think we were DMing about it. And
Yeah.
I was like, this is worth the punt. Like whether it's a lower high, whether it's a dead cat, doesn't matter. It's like we have to take the punt there. And that's really where I positioned or repositioned on coin. I'm still holding like 75% of that position, but I'll probably cut it once those are lost. Like same as you, is like I really want that 83, $82 level to be broken, because just as you've highlighted, I have it the same way, that prior move last year was like a deviation. This one kind of feels like a deviation, but it's like in that same Solana boat where it has an opportunity to do something great here. I'm just not so confident that it will.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this trades really, really cleanly in the sense that you're looking at like a meme inverse head and shoulders. You've had a deviation in 2022, and then another deviation in early 2023, and that was kind of the setup that I was looking at originally when we kind of bought on I think it was the day the SEC FUD hit, and which presented a really good opportunity to buy. And now we I wasn't expecting, to be honest, to break out 83 on the first go, but that was a welcome surprise. And then I had around 113 tagged out for a while, so I closed out a lot of my long exposure, and then as we dripped down, I closed out the rest of it. And like you said, yeah, we spoke. I think it was when we were around 73,
Yeah, right
and
around
it was
there.
just chopping around EMA 200, and we were like, we just kind of have to buy here because it's kind of like
It
a
was it
quarter
was a do
quarter
or
mid
die
range.
zone, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was worth the punt. And now this is where you de-risk. So I've closed out about, I think, about 60-70%. I left a bit of a runner because I like how it's reclaimed this EMA 20, and hopefully we can back flip 83 again, and I'll re-add long exposure in that instance.
Yep.
And I think if it does reflip 83, then that would represent a pretty good upside, and I think it would be quite good for the rest of the markets, crypto markets as well.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be catalyzed by ETF. I'm not too sure what could push that above, but I think is worth being aware that if we reject from 83, then I think we don't hold 70s. We head towards low 60s, where I'll definitely buy a lot if we
Yeah.
do get the opportunity again.
Yeah, it's interesting. Coinbase has been funny because it's literally outperformed Bitcoin. It's beta to Bitcoin. It's outperformed ETH. Um, it has fundamentals behind it. It's cooperating with like the SEC. It's winning its battles against the SEC. It's really the only avenue for American investors to enter the market. We really don't. I mean, we have Kraken, I guess, but there's really not that many opportunities for American investors. it's got to be Coinbase, right? And they're the custodian, I believe, for all these ETFs that are being filed. They have plans to move international. So I feel like even on a fundamental basis, I feel like there's a lot of positive catalysts for Coinbase. So it seems like a no-brainer trade. And it's one of those rare ones where we all seem to agree on it and it's performing well, right? You don't really ever get that.
Yeah, so I think two things is one is everyone kind of laughed when I think Dejan Spartan was the first one to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I like coin,
Yeah.
and people are like, what the fuck are you on about? Who wants to buy a stock? We're in crypto,
Yeah.
Schiller's the next 100 times alt, and he's like, I'm planning to sell it at 400 plus, and everyone was just like, what are you talking about? And all of a sudden, it started to outperform BTC, started to outperform ETH, and people are like, okay, shit, maybe he's got a point. And I think it touches on what I was talking about earlier, where you have to recognize what you're good at and what other people are good at. And in the same way that GCR can predict, the echo bubble a year in advance, and Donald can buy the bottom at 16K and then sell the top at 31K. Dejan Spartan has probably one of the best eyes for undervalued coins, and in this sense undervalued stocks as well.
Yeah.
So when he pointed out, when he said, Lido and coin are his two picks for the year, I was like, okay, fair enough, I need to start buying this shit. And that's when I've never really opened any stock charts ever, to be honest, and that was the first time where I started marking stuff out, and I was like, okay, I want to buy here and I want to sell here, etc., etc. So I think it makes sense to definitely to have a mental catalog of your favorite CT traders, and for example, in a risk on environment, I would think it's good to tell me. I run up accounts really quick, but once things start getting risk off, or if you want a swing opinion, then I'm not the guy to go to, and there's other better accounts to follow. So understanding who's good at what, and when, as more importantly, when they're good at what they're doing is definitely key, I think.
Sage advice. And using that, we'll flip gears here and we'll talk about some of your accounts that you've run up recently. The one that I was super impressed with was the XRP day. I think you blew up that day. Everyone was like, "Who is this guy that's just turned 10K to what was it, 70K at the end of the day?"
Yeah, so to be honest, it was quite fortunate in the sense where I'd never really publicly done anything like running up an account. But I was like, it'd just be somewhat cool to share um, with my followers and stuff. So I just kind of put a screenshot up, and I was like, this is a starting balance. I think it was maybe like 9-10K, and I was like, these are the trades I'm taking, and I literally just put them up live.
Yep.
And I started off with Solana, and I was so actually what happened was pretty weird. So I was long Solana, and I had take profits already set. What am I looking? I think it was around early July, right? When we had the news. So I
Yeah,
had
it
take.
was that candle that you see, right? The big one.
Yeah,
That was the end. That was XRP, and then the next day was
yeah.
that
When
daily open. The
and it
daily
just
open
it
just
just flew.
blasted to
Yeah, it
32.
just flew. Yeah, that was insane. Yeah, so I was long. I actually started the account and the journey on Twitter on the morning of the Thursday, 13th of July, and I was like, yeah, why not? We'll just start it today. And long Solana, had to take profit. I think it was around like 23 maybe, and I was going with quite a big size because what's the point of having a DGen account if you're not gonna do some DGen things on it, and I was driving actually, so I was running an errand, and next thing you know, Solana was like, it was must have been like around 20, and next thing you know, my take profits hit at 21, 22, and I'm like, shit, what's going on here? So I'm checking while I was driving, and I'm like, oh, the XRP has won the case. So I was just thinking, it's like so many thoughts went through my head, and this was one of the instances where I hadn't really planned properly what I was gonna do. But I think fortunately a lot of people were talking on Telegram. APG was popping off, as you can imagine, with with such a big news headline hitting,
Yep.
and people said that all the coins that were deemed securities by the SEC, they obviously are now repricing because the SEC have lost their biggest case. And to be honest, I hadn't actually read all of that. I was still driving, so mostly I was just kind of a bit tilted that my take profit had hit and just blown straight through on this news, whereas I could have just held and like doubled or tripled up the account. So I think the account went from like 10k to maybe like 15k off that take profit, and then I was like, okay, shit, I'm relonging it. I literally just market bought again with like double the size whilst I was driving, and I was like, okay, let me get home and I can properly see what's going on. And then I park up and I'm looking at the P&L and it's like 15k and it's been like a 5-minute drive. So I'm like, shit. So I just market close, and next thing you know, from in the space of like 2-3 hours, I'd gone from 10k to like 23, 24, 25k. And I was like, shit, this is pretty funny. So yeah, then I just documented all that on Twitter, and then people were like, what the hell? I think that started to get a bit of traction on Twitter. And then
Yeah,
the next,
I mean,
go on,
for
sorry, yeah.
sure, right? Because I think you were on like a little bit of a break, and you came back with just some power on that day. And I have a bunch of questions actually, like personally, because when I run up accounts, I'm not doing 10k to 50k, right? I'm doing like 3k to 10k. That's satisfactory for me, right? That's when I'm like, oh, I'm trading now. Like, there's nothing going on in the markets. There's no swing trades. Let me do this, right? So when you're doing something with 10 to 50 or something like that, and you're saying, oh, I just want to double up here, is there anything technical that's on your mind at that time, given that day, given the circumstances? Or is it just simply, I need to grab my sack and bid more because these opportunities don't come, they're few and in between. There maybe once or twice a year. I just need to bet more. Is that going through your head? Or is there any sort of like risk profile that you're thinking about?
Yeah, so I think that's maybe we end up taking a lot of the same setups, but I think where we differ a lot is like the risk appetite that I take when I'm risk on is very large.
Yeah.
So in this instance, with the XRP day, I was just kind of like, this is one of the few days in the year where you literally just have to bid, and you in this all year round you can define your risk and reward and your stop loss, and it's like 2 risk reward, etc., etc. But when there's headlines like this kind of hitting the market, then you literally just have to just market buy, and you can work out the risk reward later. And for me, I was like, when I'm running up a challenge account, it becomes a lot more binary in the sense, will my take profit hit first, or would my liquidation point hit first?
Mm,
And that sounds degenerate in one sense, but I want to clarify that I mean that I'll think about that before I take the trade. And if I'm thinking most likely that Solana, for example, gun to head 27 or 17 first, and the price is currently like 21, and I'm thinking 27, then it makes sense for me to hit that long and hit it with relatively good size.
yeah.
That if it does hit 27, I'll be happy with the profits on a degen account like that. And that's kind of the thinking that I employed when I run up accounts quite hard. And I think for the most part it does work. But you do have to have a solid invalidation in your head where you're thinking, okay, if we start seeing sub 20 sol and it's getting candle closes down there, then we'll just end up taking the loss because obviously I'm not looking to get liquidated.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another thing is, so where we differ is because like I mentioned, I'm more risk adverse when it comes to these things. So I'm always going to be like laddering into that long, right? I'll maybe be like, let me grab 50% size, let me see how it's moving. Okay, let me add the rest. But for you, you're just like, this is the moment, this is the day I need to bid, right? So that first entry is probably the full size, I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
yeah. Like I said, that on that challenge account, I was long, and the TP ended up hitting, made about 30%, so I was up like 13k, and then I literally longed, I think it was 8,000 Solana, and it was around $23. So I don't know about some napkin math on that, maybe around 200k, a bit less than 200k
Yep.
notional. And obviously that's with the account balance was maybe $15,000, so I was leveraged about 8-9 times
Yep.
on the full account. And that's because the upside momentum was there, the opportunity was there. I wouldn't normally do that even if I was running up a DGen account. It was only because it was headline induced.
Yeah.
And it ended up paying. 5 minutes later, I made $15,000, and that's probably one of the fastest amounts of money I've ever made across trades.
Was it
Um,
was it all Solana for you that day?
so no, so it was. it was Solana at first. That tripled me up. Let's see. I'm just looking at the thread now, actually. So yeah, I tripled up with Solana, and then let me have a look.
I think there was some XRP longs in there as well. I
Yeah,
think.
the last trade was the XRP long. So what happened was I long Solana, ended up tripling up. Then I long Matic. I think that was another coin that was declared a security, air
Yeah.
quotes, by the SEC. And this was at this point I'd finally got home after driving. I'd sat down and I was like, shit, let me like kind of properly digest what's going on, because it was absolutely mayhem that day. With even on Twitter, on Telegram, everything. So I was just catching up, like what's the list of coins that was deemed a security and now they're not. And Matic was there and it hadn't actually moved much. So I took a scalp on that around 80 cents and just closed it like 81, 82, made a few thousand there. And obviously at this point I'd already tripled up, so I could now start sizing like quite much bigger than I was at
Yeah.
the start. And I wasn't worried about, so when I'm taking a Matic long and I'm long like 150,000, etc., I'm not worried that this thing's gonna rug on me, because the upside momentum was so strong with the headline underneath me
Yeah.
that I wasn't too concerned about downside risk at the time. And then yeah, I followed that up with
Yeah,
XLM.
probably one of the things that we have to remember is on days like that, everyone's looking for an entry, right? Everyone wants to bid. Every 1% pullback is going to get bought. So you really have to be the aggressor there. Like if you're going to let price come to you, it's probably not that strong, right? If it's filling your bids where you want to be filled, that's probably that's probably weakness showing, not strength. So you want to chase the coins. You don't want to play the coins that are giving you the entry on days like that. I just
Yeah,
think.
exactly. And it'd only been like an hour since the headline anyway, so
Yep.
people were still catching up. And I think that represented a few good opportunities, like with Matic and XLM and XRP as well. People didn't really understand how big the news was for XRP, which is why it took so long to get to 90 cents. And I actually closed that trade a little bit early. I think I closed it around 70 cents, and I made 30,000 on that one, and that's what bought me from
Wild.
10 to 60. Yeah. And if I actually worked out, because I'm a sucker for pain, but I worked out what my P&L would have been if I just held it. So I was long 350,000 XRP at 60 cents, which is a few hundred thousand. I can't bother working out in my head, but and then that was from 60 cents, and it ran 50% from there to
Yeah,
90 cents.
can you pull up the XRP chart?
Yeah, sure.
So I actually fumbled XRP real bad because of that same idea of the position sizing with the first entry. You have to go to like the 5 minute or like
Yeah,
10
yeah,
minute. So there was that first news candle. And the first news candle did basically, I want to say 10%. And there was like, you can't get in, right? So I don't even know where this is. What day was that?
Oh, let me zoom out to 15 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm forgetting exactly what day that
There we
was.
go.
There you
Yeah,
go. There's
there
the
we go.
candle. It's not even that big consolidation at 58. I got in even earlier. I got in at like 55 or something.
Yeah.
That first candle, right? I saw that one and I got in, yeah, 55ish, something in there, right? And I'm on the 1 minute chart and I'm looking at this and I threw in cash and I'm like, I'm not going to go full size. And he said, need to see how this goes. And I'm just seeing P&L fly everywhere,
Mm,
because it's like 2-3% volatility. I'm levered up 10x and I'm just seeing shit fly all over the place. And I didn't have a plan. And I took profit heavily at like 60 something, 65. I think on that wick, that red candle, right? I think
mm,
that's the
mm.
one that I took profit
I
on.
bet I bet you felt good about that at the time.
Yeah, I was stoked. I was posting the P&L in the clinic and I was like, oh, the account's running up. Like, we're feeling great. And I was not fucking prepared for that next one, dude.
Yeah, yeah, man. Same,
That
to be
did
honest.
not feel good when I was like, oh, I first of all didn't get in the full size. I got 50% of the size and then I took 50% out on that red candle and I saw this go up and I'm like, dude, I just left so much. Like, what am I doing? This is the
Yeah,
risk
yeah.
on environment. This is not the time to be responsible.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that happened to me as well. So I ended up longing, I think, like just a retest of like 60, this consolidation, because obviously I'd longed other coins up until that point, and I was like, okay, XRP is holding really well and looks like it wants more. So I longed 60, thinking, we've already pumped 30% from it started off at below 50 cents, and now we're at 60, and I'm longing 60 for 70, and it wicks 75, and I was thinking, okay, but then in the next like 10 minutes, it literally went up to 95 cents. And I
Yeah,
was like, oh my God, okay, I could have made
insanity.
like 100K if I
Yeah,
just held that original long from 60 open, which was insane. But,
yeah.
I think it's just, you just got to take that
I
lesson, and
was
you're never going to sell the top. So,
I was in my big trade that day was liquidity, LQTY. That
okay, yeah.
that thing went insane, but I was positioned in LQTY before the XRP news. So I didn't have like XRP size on the trade, right? I was just so fortunate that it was just going insane. And I was just, taking profits the entire way up. I actually got to long this like twice that same day because it pulled back hard and gave me another entry. But that was the big winner for me, and I was pumped, and I was like, "Oh, I'm printing, I'm doing so well." Yeah, it was that big pullback, and
Mm,
I got a second leg. Yeah, so super fun day. But then I go on CT and I start comparing myself to other people, and I'm seeing what you're printing. I see what Runner's doing, and I'm going, I'm really fumbling right now. Like I'm euphoric. Like I'm posting in all caps. I know I'm printing hard, but like I'm seeing what other people do. I'm not doing that yet. So I looked at like around the market. I was like, what's coiling? And I see Pepe. And I see Pepe and I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna throw the entire I had like 10K on BitGet at the time. I was like, let me just throw the entire account in there. It was one of those big spikes
yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah.
in that distribution. I forget exactly which one, whatever day it was, but
Yeah, I think
I
it was
threw
this
the
one.
whole thing in there, doubled that account, and I was like, okay, that's it. That's the end of the day. I'm calling it there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
But
think I remember you DM me as well, like, bro, I saw your account and then I had to double up mine as well.
yeah, I was like, I'm not taking enough risk. These guys are showing me how it's done. So like I was like, let me take one more trade, and that was the Pepe trade. And it was fortunate that it was a kind of a lagger. It was like an hour or two later before everything
Yeah,
else was
yeah, it
pumping.
was.
It pumped like a little bit later.
Mm. Yeah, no,
But yeah,
definitely. And
man,
I think
fun day, fun day.
those days are, they represent opportunities in the market that you probably get maybe 5 times in the year. That famous I don't know how to say his name, MGNR, that
Yeah,
famous tweet, 5 times a year the market there's free money on the floor and you just got to take it. And I think that represents one of those days. And for sure, you just got to bet more.
there's so much alpha in that tweet actually because it tells you everything you need to know about the market to
Mm,
participate when it's there, to take the easy money when it's there, and to just do nothing. And I think that's the underlooked part of that tweet is like the do nothing outperformance part is
yeah,
when everyone else is trying to chase the hard money, the hard trades, the difficult, the PvP, the chop, do nothing, right? And just mentally prepare. And you said it at the top of the hour is like just prepare for those big moves and try to be risk on when the market's risk on. There's so much alpha in that tweet, man.
yeah, exactly. I think the do nothing, like you said, is something that I've really tried to employ a lot more this year. And I think people really sometimes don't understand that. Like, even in like my friend tech chat and stuff, sometimes I'm just not taking any trades, or I'm not speaking, and they're like, what trades are you taking? I'm not taking anything. I'm just
Yeah,
waiting,
yeah,
because there's nothing like there's obviously there's things are moving. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not good enough to catch every single move. I'd rather just wait for
yeah,
something that screams, long me or short me, and if that's not there, then it's not there.
yeah. And I kind of share the exact same thing. I've been for myself very very happy with my performance this year, and I've been sharing everything top and bottom for the last like 6 7 months, and the last 2 or 3 weeks I'm not sharing much, but the growth is there like on Twitter and stuff, and I think people are expecting me to be sharing more, and I'm like, guys, the market, the environment's changed. It's not the same market that it was in June. It's not the same market that it was in April or March or whatever, right? It really has fundamentally changed, and the opportunity, we've gone down the entire risk curve. Like we've gone from majors, we've gone from narratives, we've done the AI thing, we've done whatever, right? What do we have now? We've done on chain, we've done scams, we've done memes. All we have now are cartel coins, right? And that's never been my forte, is to, be able to recognize opportunity using open interest, using, who's offsides, and playing PvP coins like that. I know. I think what I've learned now is just go long and like it's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Like just long the coin, don't think about it. But yeah, that's, I'm kind of late to that trade now. That these things have been going on for quite some time. But yeah,
Yeah,
there's really not the opportunity that there was for the rest of the year at the current time.
yeah, exactly. I think we're, as we've said, it's very bleak at the moment. But it's looked bleak before. It's looked bleak in December. It looked bleak when USDC depegged, and it looked bleak until BlackRock, should I say, filed their ETF. So
Yep.
I think the common denominator and all of that is there's been headlines that catalyze the move, and until we get real inflow from interested buyers, we're just a news market right now. And I think that's why we get these reversions of every single pump that we get,
Yep.
because most of the headlines are not representing imminent buyers. So the Grayscale, they won their, that was this candle, right? They won their case versus the SEC, but
Yep.
that doesn't mean that there's going to be a new influx of buyers coming in this week or next week or even next month. And the market quickly realized that, and we're trading back to where we were before the headline. So,
Yep.
I
I
think risk off is currently the best play.
Yeah, I also think whoever wanted to position for ETF news has done that, right? If someone wanted a spot exposure, they've picked it up. Like they've had months and months to do that. And kind of I feel like, the ETF, I don't want to say it's priced in, but it does feel like it's priced in, right? It feels like when BlackRock filed and there's all the stats of, 99.9% they get approved. This is BlackRock. This is like the king of the market. There's no way they're going to get denied, etc. We got positive news against the SEC. So all these things are going for us. It feels like it's an inevitability for that to get approved, whether it's next month or next year. It doesn't matter. But the market at the current time is telling you, we don't care. We don't want to go any higher. Like we're content with where we are. And I think you need to respect and listen to that at the moment and say like, okay, we really have had a wild ride in 2023, even though we've just done a 2x from 16 to 32 or whatever it may be, right? 15 to 30. That has been super opportunistic. And I think the smarter or big money or smart money, or whatever you want to call it, is kind of saying, now's the time to relax. Now's the time to wait for something new to build, a new narrative. We just need time away from the euphoria, time to recuperate, and then we'll go again when the time is ready. I think that's kind of what I'm seeing in the market right now. And that may coincide with the news. And I would be really happy if it didn't happen until January and just gave charts time to relax and go sideways.
Yeah, and I think I agree with most of what you said. One thing I would maybe disagree on slightly is the ETF stuff being priced in. And initially I was thinking that everyone now kind of knows the ETF's coming. So what's the point in longing and thinking that things will change once it's approved?
Yep.
And I think I was reading a lot of like Donald's tweets at the time that the ETF first got filed, which was around June time, and that's when I got very long along everything, as I said, around 25k, 26k, and I was one of the people that, as you said, looking for that 32k liquidity, but we never ended up getting it, so I had to close a bit lower. But what he said was a little bit of what you said, that BlackRock, they have like a 99% success rate, and they do, and hopefully we will get that approval whenever it may be. But I think what the ETF represents, if it does get approved, is a lot of new money coming in, of legacy money coming in, and I think it's difficult to price that in right now, simply because the magnitude of size that will enter the market through the ETF is just too big, and I think that money is waiting. If we get an approval, then I think that could catalyze a really big move for majors and for the
Yep.
market as a whole. But the announcement itself, yeah, I think that's to some degree it's priced in. But once the ETF does become active and it's
Mm-hmm.
tradable and investable, I
Yep.
think that could be one of the major catalysts for a large run up next year.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I think like you said, the announcement itself may be kind of like a 1-2 day, who knows how long it'll last, but it's definitely worth being active for that announcement. Um, but once that occurs, it's going to take time for the products to be actually integrated and in place.
Yeah,
But that in and of itself when it does occur will be a huge narrative for crypto, because we really
Yeah.
don't have much. I don't know if people are that excited about the halving or anything like that, but an ETF, and we're thinking inflows, passive inflows to the market, wealth effect of Bitcoin, going down the risk. I think that'll be a lot of fun for us when the time comes.
Yeah, and I think that's as we kind of just said with coin, that it outperformed BTC, outperformed Ethereum, and people would have never really had that on their bingo card for this year.
Yep.
And I think one of the reasons that it has outperformed is because there's much bigger money in stocks compared to our market, which is it's basically a microcosm compared to the legacy markets. For example, when DJ Spot first mentioned coin, I was like, okay, let me see what the market cap is, and it was like, I don't know, like off the top of my head, I think it was like 6 billion, 4 to 6 billion, something like that.
Hmm.
And I was like, why is he shilling me this? What, how am I going to get even a 2x out of it? It's literally multi-billion. It'd be in the top 20 or top 10 of coins.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different beast out there, and it was moving. I was like, how's this going to move 20%? And then I watched it literally go from like 35 to 50, 60, and I was like, oh shit, this moves a lot. Just
How
because it's a stock doesn't mean that it's limited to small moves.
Yeah. How beautiful is it to see the continuation bid in stocks that we don't get in crypto? Like, you
Yeah.
get that 4% day and another 4% day and another 4% day for like 10, 12 days in a row, like watching Nvidia this year. We don't get that in crypto. We get 50% move and then a 50% move. It's like, if you don't catch it, you're done.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, like charting coin and stuff, it's been really easy. It's been really clean to play that range break, to play the flip of 83, the tag of 113.
Yeah,
It's been one of the cleanest charts to look at. Whereas like you're
agree.
looking at Bitcoin, and I mean it's awful. That's why I've had to go like so low time frame,
Yeah.
because how can you realistically, obviously people did, but for me, I don't know how I would trade this high time frame, in the sense that we're trading literally
If
in
if
mini
you pull up
ranges.
the weekly, it's pretty clean. But I'd agree with
Yeah.
you. Every other time frame is pretty ugly. But the Bitcoin weekly, I think, is all you really needed to do this year.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of my problems as well. Like I don't zoom out enough to the weekly. I get lost in the dailies and the 4 hours and the 15 minutes. But it is definitely really helpful
Yep.
to zoom out from time to time, just to keep that perspective and keep that bias.
Yep. Well, we've been going for a while now. I'm going to ask you just two more questions.
Yeah, for sure.
One, is there anything that you're looking forward to for 2024? Any narrative, any coin, anything you want to accumulate? Is there anything in your mind strategically for next year?
I think Lido, it's been awful to trade and to hold as well. Um, I think that's a lot to do with the fact that Jump owns or owned a lot of it. I think if you can buy it, below 1.3, and if you get below 1, then that represents huge value. I think
Yep.
below 1, in the right off the right headline or the right catalyst, it could get there very briefly.
Yeah,
With that, we saw BTC go from what 28 to 24 in like 1 hour.
absolutely.
So it's not out of the question at all to see Lido drop another 50%, for example, or 30%, should I say? So I think it's definitely one that people might sleep on in the right environment. I think it will do very well. Solana as well. It's not really. How do I say? It's not done what we expected. In the sense that it hit 33, and then since then it's been very, very poor,
Yeah.
very disappointing. But again, I think that's just representative of the overall market conditions. If you can
Mhm.
buy, we're already below sub 20 now, and if you can buy, I actually bought this wick. I had a resting order.
Yeah,
I
we
just
both bought
remembered.
that one.
Yeah, so I was AFK. I went to do uni work. I think literally this week, and I was like, I'm not buying anything, but I'll leave a limit order like so low that it's 99% never gonna hit, and if it hits, I'm happy to hold that kind of thing. And I think Sol was literally like $19, and I set the limit for 12.9. And then I was working, and I got a notif on Bybit like your order's been filled. And I was like, what order? And I'm like, oh shit, okay, I bought this, but because I was still busy with work, I was up like maybe like 2,000, and I was like, yeah, it's free money, so I'm just gonna take it, and closed. And then
That's unfortunate.
yeah, I didn't realize that that was literally the peak or bottom. So, obviously, I'm not complaining. Free money is free money, but I think it's worth, as you said, marking out levels on the weekly, on the daily, and having those huge inflection points. So literally,
Yep.
I'd mark this out with this retest here. It represented for me a good level to buy, and I think we were around $20, and it ended up dipping that low. So I
Yep.
think if you could get, if you could get 13, if you could get 50, maybe even $16 on Sol, then depending on the overall market, that represents really good value just for even if you're just selling it at 27 again,
Yep.
that's
And,
completely
and look at
fine,
the
really.
moves that Solana's given us, like this year, like the yearly open move, or maybe even December after FTX, and this one right here. That they're violent, and this is a top 10 coin. These are crazy, crazy moves, and I think they just repeat. Like
Yeah,
I think
literally.
you get another, yeah,
So you got a 200% move from 8 to 27, and then you just straight back down to 13, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. We ended up obviously working to 30, 33 as well. So
yeah,
yeah, Solana provides a lot of volatility, and I think in the right environment, it could do very well. I wouldn't be surprised to eventually see it hit that 40. I think a lot of people were looking for 40,
yeah.
and it's disappointed in that sense.
Next
But
year,
yeah, next year, yeah, for
next year,
sure,
yeah.
hopefully.
All
And
right.
yeah, ROB as well.
Oh
I
yeah,
missed it.
for
I
sure.
missed it a few times, but it's definitely on my radar now. Um,
Valuation wise, it's very attractive still. It's one of those funny coins where it's like, I know that it should be valued more, it should be valued higher, but it doesn't mean that it still can't drop 30% from where we're at or more.
yeah, yeah, and I think there could be with these smaller coins, there's often headlines and stuff that may be misinterpreted, or they might be negative to start with. So there's not trying to predict anything, but a lot of coins end up with like a minor exploit, or something like a dev leaves the team, or maybe they
Or
get
Gainsey
delisted.
puts in a bottom.
Yeah, Gainsey has to capitulate
Yeah.
and make a bottom, as they say, and those kind of catalysts are really good to buy and then hold on for a while.
Yep.
So I've missed a lot of the RLB moves, but if there's something that does present itself and provides an opportunity to buy the dip, then for sure I'll be interested in getting on board at that point.
Yep. Perfect, man. And then very last question doesn't have anything to do with trading, but any kind of imparting wisdom, life, health, happiness you want to share with us? Anything that's core to you?
Life, health, happiness. It's a tough ask,
Anything
man.
you want to share.
I think I say this all the time, and I've said it already on this stream, but um, I see a lot of people complain about CT, and people complain about, it's people are negative, or people are no longer here, or there's no value, and I think that's one of the most incorrect statements I've ever heard. Without CT, I wouldn't have learned how to trade these markets at all, and
Mm.
there's so many good traders. I mean, like, for example, like KBM, he literally flips like half a milli every other day. You don't get access to people like Hasaka, GCR, Loma. I could list so many different
Yep.
names, and they literally kind of unknowingly taught me everything that I know, just by reading their tweets. Salsa as well. You learn so much about different styles of trading, the different options out there, even just kind of getting told what narratives next, and understanding how the metagame works.
Yep.
There's so much value in CT, and I think going into CT with that open mind, and curating a list of people who you think, this guy can help me and this guy can help me,
Yep.
and I need to start paying attention to this person. It's just so helpful, and you can make money without really knowing anything. Like, even on days when I'm not paying attention to the market, for example, I think it was around the time Maker was the kind of hot topic, and Hasaka tweeted about it, and I just ended up buying it, whilst not really paying attention, and end up making money. It's so easy in that sense
Hmm.
to follow good accounts and profit off them, basically. So I think paying attention to CT would be
Yep.
my number one thing.
Very well said. Very well said. All right, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. I think this will be fun for everyone to listen to. on recording. I don't know how many people were in. I haven't checked anything, but we should be able to have it recorded and everything and put on YouTube. So I hope everyone enjoys Schmosby. I hope you had fun, bro. I'd love to have you on as much as possible. We could do this again. I think it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. I had a really good time. I've always been thinking about, getting into streaming. And I think one of the best ways is to just hop on a few people's streams and talk shit about the markets, basically.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's been really good.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, 100%, man. All right, brother. Take care.
You too, bro.